Welcome everyone to the Adversity to Advantage podcast. I'm very excited. After a little bit of back and forth, I've got Ben Akers on the podcast. Thank you so much for joining us.
Pleasure.
So good to have you. So I recently saw you at TedX Tunbridge Wells doing your, was it a 16-minute, was it a 15-minute talk?
It was 12 minutes.
It was 12 minutes. Usually they're 19 or 20, but 12 minutes. My God, you got a standing ovation. I went with my boyfriend. We were all on our feet. There were tears. It was a beautiful moment. Unfortunate that, the standing ovation was really about a really sad event. And I was blessed to see you is sort of where people were getting drinks and stuff and kind of get your card and get in touch. So we're excited to just hear a little bit about your story. So tell us just a bit about you. What do you do? What are you passionate about at the moment?
So what do I do? So I grew up in advertising. So I was an advertising creative, like it seems like everyone on that stage at TEDx. We're in advertising, and I got to a point that I needed to do more. It had to be more than just money and awards at that point. That's all that sort of like seemed to motivate everyone. So I started working in purpose. I started working using my evil powers for good is the way that one of my old bosses, a bloke called Ben Akers, Republic of Everyone, he framed it, and I held on to that. And so that's what I did. And it was good because what happens was in creativity, you've got in advertising creative, you have a power. You have this power to change behavior, to sort of get someone to buy something. And I started going, well, what if I could change behavior for good? What if I could help people doing good things instead of sort of like, so a lot of work with sustainability in the environment. And when I came back to this country, that was in Australia. And when I came back to this country, literally 2 weeks after I landed, my childhood best friend took his own life. And I didn't connect my day job with my grief, if you like, my real life. And it took me 4 years of counselling and everything else, of trying to work out how to deal with this brother by another mother, who we grew up together. We were born 4 days apart. Why he was feeling this way, why he got to this point. And it was just purely by luck that I read an article that said that that told me the horrible statistics of male suicide, and then sort of said inside this that sort of talking about men of my age, sort of. So I like early 40s, and Steve was 38 at the time when he took his own life, and I got to the point where I was reading this article and it said men of my age watch sport and documentaries. So it just suddenly clicked that I needed to make a film. And I'd made a couple of films in the past. They were sort of part of my journey, if you like. I wouldn't call myself a filmmaker. I'm sort of a problem solver. I turned to my wife, who's a producer, and I sort of said, I need to make a film about Steve, and I need to make a film to help stop the next Steve. And she said to me, I don't want you to do that. And she wrote, well, because you knew how much it was gonna affect me. Why would you put yourself out there like that? Why would you drag all these things up? Why would you sort of like she's doing it to protect me. I mean, her job is
seeing you go through the pain.
Yeah, so we talked it out for a long time, and I sort of said, like, I need to make it. And so we worked out a way of dialing up my my protection, my therapy, whatever, all these things. And yeah, we sort of went on this journey, and we did everything from we did it the way they tell you not to do stuff. So we crowdfunded it. We didn't walk out with a story to start with. I knew what I needed to make, but I didn't have all the story. And what was really interesting was that when I asked people to give me their tenors, they weren't just financially invested, they were emotionally invested in the story. These amazing stories started coming towards me, and what started as a sort of like a 20-minute piece ended up with us recording 50 hours of footage and trying to cram it into what currently sits as an hour and a half. And I mean, it's been amazing. I mean, like we've been touring it for a year. So I did the sort of the premiere last March, and the idea was going along that whole thing of how do I get men who don't watch, who don't want to talk about this stuff, how do I get to them? Because I can sit there and I go, okay, they're watching documentaries about nature in at home, but what happens if I go? What happens if I go to them? So that's what I did. I sort of went to. I started as a pub tour, so I just started going around all different pubs and going to them, and then I sort of went, well, okay, well, let's expand it from pubs. What about if I go to gyms? What about if I go to sort of building sites? What if I go to prisons? I've done 3 screenings in prisons, and it was fascinating because no matter where you are, all the men are sort of feeling the same type of thing, and because I've shown my vulnerability, the thing that sort of my wife Claire was worried about, because I've shown my vulnerability, it made it easier for them. It made it more comfortable for them to show theirs and open up.
Yeah.
And then from there, we sort of created this thing called Talk Club, which is a talking male movement, if you like, and that's just gone gangbusters again. And it's sort of like, it was almost like I didn't mean to do this. I'm just a bloke who lost his mate, and it's sort of turned into this thing that's got bigger and bigger and bigger and bigger and bigger, and but it's amazing. It's just sort of like we were recording our own podcast on Sunday. Someone who's a member of Talk Club wanted to start one, and we read out this email from someone that has come to a club, and you just sort of you get floored. You get properly floored because you're going, like, losing Steve to saving. I'd probably say we've saved hundreds of men now, and that's so I've stopped other best friends feeling the way that I feel and I felt.
So there's so many directions I want to go with this. One is, I guess, around your own conditioning around masculinity and leading you to that point of going, God, this feels empty. I need some purpose in my life. And then I really want to learn from all the conversations that you've had about what men are saying. What are the themes that you've learned about? So let's just go back to you.
Yeah.
So in that lead up to being successful, it looked like you ticked all the masculine boxes of success, problem solving, and all the rest of it. And it led you to sort of an emptiness or wanting to use your powers for good. What was that lead up of you maybe noticing that something wasn't quite right for you anymore?
Well, it's interesting, the masculinity thing, because basically, because my dad was schizophrenic, and my dad left when I was 11.
Okay.
So my sort of so I mean, well, he didn't leave. There was lots of things going on, but I haven't seen him since I was 11. So I was brought up by my stepdad was present throughout my life, but he was. And he is, I mean, it's taken me a lot of years to actually have that relationship with him, where to tell him how important he is to me. But he always felt that he was my stepdad. And my mum is such an amazing, strong figure who is a therapist. So, and teaches me to become therapists. So I was always very in touch with my feelings, and always very aware of who I am. And always trying to sort of be aware of my mental state as well. And even with it just sounds like women are telling me not to do something, but my mum told me she didn't want me to do advertising because she thought I was too sensitive. And it's quite hard advertising, because you sort of like, every single time you walk into a room, you go, this is the best I can come up with. And you're sort of like going, please judge me creatively.
Yeah.
And it's sort of
the rejection.
Yeah, I mean, you get used to the rejection. You sort of get used to it, but you don't see it as rejection. You have to reframe your brain to sort of go, it's not rejection. So the way that I've worked with masculinity is that I'm quite happy. I'm a football-loving, lager-loving boy down the pub, but I'm also a feminist with a beard, and it's sort of it's really important for me as a father of two girls and one boy to sort of like to actually to make sure that they have everything that they need, all the skills they need, to go out into society, both masculine and feminine. So
you had clear, I guess, role modeling from your mum around how to talk, but you would also have had role modeling from your dad, even from that young age. And bearing in mind he did leave, and the impact of that. I mean, where did that leave you? Because 11 is quite a formative year, moving into that teenage.
Yeah, well, it was sort of. Well, it was earlier than that. It was sort of all the way through my late. What do you call them?
Primary school.
Yeah, but it's sort of like. But what was interesting for me was that there was having that. I was never. I mean, I got into football late. I was never a sort of like. I mean, my boy is into football at 4. He started on that, and I really believe in the power of team sports. As a man, I really wanted my daughters to play team sports because I think you get so much from team sports, not just being in that sort of on that field together, but all the camaraderie before and after, and I'm disappointed the sort of like the way that it's panned out with Bella, because she sort of was more, my eldest was more, she was a great footballer, and I wanted her to have that feeling that sort of always seems to just come to men. And so there was lots of things like that. And with my mum, she was very, I mean, she's shaped me, and I quite happily give her every credit for that. And I think it was always the case of, to me, it was always about a case of if you want to do something, you've got to stick with it and work hard to get it. But it was interesting, even with Father's Day recently, sort of like last Father's Day, I sent a letter to Steve's dad, and I sent a letter to my stepdad, and I told them both how much I loved them, and how much the sort of like how important they are to me. And I talked to Steve's dad about how him being silly with me and Steve as kids was so important to me, and then that has helped me be silly with my kids, and then told him I loved him and told him how important he was. And I told my stepdad that he is my dad. He's been my dad for 30 years. He's the most important male person in my life. And he doesn't have to wait for my mum to come to see us. He can come anytime he likes as well. Mm-hmm. And it changed, just 2 pages of writing changed so much in my relationship with both of them. Again, showing my honesty, showing my vulnerability, showing that it's okay to use the word love to a man, was really interesting. And sort of, obviously my stepdad came down, jumped on a train and come down and saw us, and it was fascinating because he felt real ownership of the relationships with my children, and then with sort of Les, Steve's dad, he just sort of, when I caught up with him, only I've seen him a few times since then, but we had a really good chat about it a couple of weeks ago when I saw him, and it was, he just sort of he just was he doesn't cry, but he was there. He was almost there. So it's lovely. But you go, that took me 10 minutes. Do you know what I mean? For a piece of paper. And you go, and I don't think blokes think that. I don't think we do that enough. I don't think we own the word love between men. I tell my friends I love them, my male friends, because they're important to me. Yes, it's sort of like, it's a different love to my wife, we hope, but I do love them. They are important to me, and now there's lots of they're returning the phone calls with, love you, mate, see. But it's not.
It's like you've got to start to disrupt the conditioning around banter and backslapping and football chat, and like one person just needs to disrupt it for guys to be like, oh fuck, I can be myself here. And it's like you guys have the same needs as women do, as far as I'm aware, right? Which is connection, love, belonging, all those sorts of things. But there's a different teaching method on how to get that. Or like even fighting can be a feeling of belonging, right? It's like, well, at least I'm in the guy club if I'm drinking and boozing, whatever it might be, or bragging about things. But times are changing. I don't know how many guys you sort of interviewed. I mean, you said there were 50 hours of footage across generations, and just the differences there.
Yeah, I mean, well, it's not so much the interviews of that, because the whole goal of the film was to stop another 38-year-old man taking his own life. So it wasn't about seeing. I mean, we did 100. I asked 100 men to do me a video diary about who they were and what they were doing.
Okay.
And that was cross-generational and cross-cultural. But it wasn't even me picking that out. It was just me firing things out until I got 100 men. But what's been more interesting is the reaction to Talk Club, is that level of belonging inside Talk Clubs. We've now got over 1,000 men, 1,070 men, 65 men or something, regularly talking about their numbers, about how they are out of 10, and owning that space, owning that sort of like, I feel a 3 today. I feel a 3 because of this. Da, 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 da. And when you've got the physical groups, I think we've got 25 set up at the moment. Across the world, we've got one in Australia, we've got one being set up in the States, we've got sort of one's being set up in Europe, and it's fascinating because what you can do is you can go. It doesn't matter who you are, where you come from. An 18-year-old and a 65-year-old can have bond over the same feeling, and that's what I've seen in front of me. And you sit there and you go. That need for belonging and that need to be listened to, because what we do, like, don't get me wrong, banter's good, football's good, I love all that, right? But what we do is being listened to, because because quite a lot of the time blokes try and solve it for each other.
Oh, right. Yes.
Yeah. And it's not, it's a natural thing, but we don't know, like when we talk about Talk Club, it's not just about talking, it's about listening. You can sit there for 2 hours and you might only be talking for 15 minutes. And but so it should be called Listening Club, right? Because it is actually about active listening, and that is the most powerful thing. And I think what we're doing unintentionally is we're teaching men to listen. So we're teaching men to have a better relationship with their partners. We're teaching them to have a better relationship with their kids, and even better relationships at work, because they actually can take. Because we've had that from a feedback, but where they've gone, just me letting how I'm feeling about things out now allows me to sort of do these other things around my life, which we never knew that was going to happen.
No, exactly. And what are some of the themes that are coming up as far as how men are feeling, or what they feel is stopping them, I guess, from talking?
Well, the usual stresses and strains. The idea of, it's not so much talking. I mean, conditioning is sort of.
Yeah,
I mean,
that's the main thing, isn't it?
Yeah. I mean, if you actually just look at history, you sit there and you go, so baby boomers, my parents, our parents, sort of world, were sort of like were taught on how to be a father, if you like, by men who survived or came out of the war. So basically, if they've seen combat, or if they've not seen combat, just being bombed and not knowing whether your house is going to be there, that's trauma, right? Yeah. So then suddenly, the baby boomers, in my opinion, their whole job was actually just create stability, right? Because their parents didn't have stability, and so that's all the baby boomers did. That's the reason why they've got all the houses and they've got everything else. Because, and no debt, is because they knew how to work hard and to
be the
providers, and also to a certain level where roles sat, sort of. So the man knew what his job was, the woman knew what her job was, right? And whether that's right or wrong, but they build the next generation, the Gen X's, to sort of to both male and female, to sort of to go out, work hard, play hard, get what you need, right? We're not afraid of debt. We're not afraid of this. We haven't got any of the houses, but we've got all the email addresses, right? So but what we found out of that is that this is the generation that is trying to struggle, because what happens is that we were taught how to be fathers by men who worked and would come home and play in the evening. Right now, you have to sort of like, I mean, someone said to me, you have to win the bacon and cook it too, and it sort of does feel very much like that as a generational thing. So what comes out mostly in themes in talk clubs is parenting, about am I being the best father I can be, and then closely followed or sometimes overtaken by money. Right, I need to be earning more money. So this balance between being a father and having money, being a father, having money, you sort of go, well, and that's quite a lot of the time. My balance is trying to find those things of going, am I giving enough attention to my family life? But I need to earn more money to keep to keep the roof on. So and a lot of decisions I've made in my career, when you go for this thing at the beginning where money's the object, you have lots of money and it's great, but you never see your family, so it's not great.
So there's this trade-off.
Yeah. So then one of the major reasons why I moved to Bristol was sort of, for me, it was about I wanted to walk my eldest daughter, now my daughter, to school. I just wanted to build the whole world around walking her to school, and then so that was what I did. So to get that, I couldn't be working in a certain industry. I couldn't be working on a certain thing. So I set up my own thing to start that, and then when you pick up when you create things like, okay, I think I need to make something like Steve, you go, okay, this is going to be hard, both financially, emotionally, time-wise, but it'll hopefully help someone else. But then you fight that thing of going, well, okay, well, I've been away for 40, maybe even 45 days for the past year. I mean, like, and some of those things on 2 or 3, so maybe it's even higher than that, maybe it's even sort of 60 days. So it's quite heavy. Do you know what I mean? You're sort of going, like, you're talking a fifth of a year, sort of being away, just touring something. So
things different for you now.
Yeah, the things are. I mean, but it's. I mean, we have our own struggles, me and my wife. But we have to be a team. We have to fight really hard to be a team, because you've got 3 little people to look after. But yes, so it is that masculinity line is really interesting, because it's sort of we all need to know what we need. We need our roles. My job is a father. My job is a husband. My job is a. But then I also need to be going, okay, what do I need to do to fulfill my own purpose? So yeah, I mean, I've taken a lot of time looking at going, am I selfish for doing this? And it's been a hard line. It's been a hard line, because I didn't even want to be on. I mean, when I created the film, I didn't even want to be on screen. I didn't I sort of went, how do I? Only way that I can do this is put myself on screen. I have to be in there, because that's the only way that people are going to open up. But it's not something I'll naturally do. I don't like a spotlight on me.
And so this is where the theme of this podcast is: people hit rock bottom moments or catalyst moments. And for you, it was Steve, where it suddenly breaks things open and you go through immense pain. You talk about 4 years of the therapy, the grief cycle, I mean, I can only imagine the low points that you would have faced during that time. And out of those ashes, as they say, it's figuring out, how do I rebuild myself? And this purpose it's not just an abstract purpose. It was born of your own pain, and this flame of, how do I prevent this pain reaching other people? And the kind of, you saw the knock-on effect, right? The ripple effect to so many lives, from Steve not realizing that perhaps he could have spoken or done something to shift things, right? And so I guess that's what I'm curious about, is that journey of pain that led you to not knowing the outcome, but knowing that for some reason you're the guy who's got to put this out there. Well, I mean, just talk us through that little journey.
Well, I mean, that's the thing. I mean, I remember. So we'd been back in the country. Steve was in Canada and I was in Australia. So I never met his kids until his funeral.
Wow.
I never met his wife until his funeral. Right. So because we'd been in Australia for 6 years, and every time we come back, we hadn't crossed again. So there was lots of things where sort of we'd do WhatsApp, we'd chat WhatsApp, we'd sort of Facebook, we'd do a Zoom or whatever. But it was a very distant relationship. And so when I'd been back for a couple of weeks, and I got a phone call, a missed call from his cousin. Then I got an email from his cousin saying, email me. Then I got a Facebook email me. And I was like, and I hadn't talked to his cousin in years. And I was like, what's going on here? So I knew something had happened. And it was a case of, okay, so Steve used to like fast cars. And I thought my automatic reaction was, he's died in a car crash, right? I sort of knew that something had happened. And I knew for that thing. I never in a million years thought he'd take his own life. I never in a million years thought it was suicide.
How come? What was his personality like?
He was a really happy, lovely, normal, silly bloke. You know, I mean, he was just. I mean, like, if you ever get to see have you seen the film yet?
Not yet, no.
Yeah. So if you ever, so stevedocumentary.com, you can download it, but I'll send you a copy. But but in the film, I get sort of this and Andy's Man Club and Carl's Best Man Project, all inspired talk club. But it was this thing I call the round table, where I get sort of like 8 of my best friends together, and we just talk really honestly about how we feel. And Steve could easily be sitting there amongst all of those lot. We are just normal, everyday blokes who didn't have a drugs problem, didn't have an alcohol problem, didn't have a particularly stressful job, didn't have any external things, had a beautiful childhood, sort of like, literally there was nothing there, right? If you were going to look at it as a sort of as a tick box session,
sure.
But what I found out was he just got so overwhelmed by so many things inside his life, and he wasn't equipped enough to talk. And I mean, as I said in the TED talk, if I believe that if Talk Club existed 10 years ago, Steve would still be with us, and I wouldn't be chatting to you now. Mm-hmm. But it's one of those things where I think that there's so many men taking their own lives, and the numbers are so horrible.
Because it's the biggest killer of men, right? Between the ages of 25 and 45?
The biggest killer of men currently the statistics, I think it's the biggest killer of men under 50.
Yeah.
And I heard recently that someone said it was the biggest killer of men under 55. Now, if that's true, because I know the numbers are going up again, right? If that's true, that is getting into sort of like low-level cancers, prostate cancers and sort of stuff like that. And I mean, the one I quote is that it's a bigger killer of men under 45. So statistically, the thing most likely to kill me is me, right? But I'm 44. So if that's true, for another 11 years, the thing most likely to kill me is me. And so what happened? So what happened there was I just sort of like, I remember falling to the ground and going, "What's going on?" And I just moved back to the country and going, I don't know where I am, what I'm doing. I mean, we were talking like 4 days before, because I was in Manchester and he's a Man United fan. He was talking about coming up to see a game. I was booking tickets. He was sort of like, it wasn't like, but by the state of his letter, by the information in his letter, he'd written that before we talked. He knew that letter was written, and he was thinking about it. And these are the things that I go, could I have said something differently? Could I have done something? So there was lots of those things of just him being, me trying to work, because there was 7 stages of grief. With suicide, there's an 8th, which is sort of like a question, why? And we'll never know why.
Yeah.
And what I found was that I sort of, I kept those things very, very separate. I kept the sort of my feelings and my grief and me carrying his coffin and sort of seeing his family that were my family, and sort of doing a eulogy at his funeral, and his sort of, and then meeting this woman who is his wife, and going like to who like her looking at me going, who the fuck are you? And it was sort of, and then sort of, so then this point of going through this thing for the next few years, and then suddenly deciding that I needed to do this, and then having that conversation with his dad. That was sort of like the hardest thing, because I sort of went, like, I know they know me, they know that I would, they know that to put someone in a space where you go, I'm going to drag all this up. I'm going to drag all this up. You've spent sort of best part of 4 years dumbing it down,
trying to get over it,
and trying to get over it, and I'm going to drag all this up again. And by the end, I hope that you'll feel better and we'll save some lives.
What was the next? Yeah.
So, and basically, because Steve's family have always been my surrogate family, they sort of, I mean, they went, look, Ben, we trust you. If you need to do this, if you think it'll help people, then we'll do it. And they're quite private people. And so back to the thing of there's actually only one person in the world that could have made this film, and it was me. Because if Channel 4 walked in or someone else walked in, they would never be able to be as open and as trusting as they could be with me. So, but it was like literally when I remember the first day filming with Steve's mum, and when I started talking to her, it could have been yesterday that he took his own life. It was literally, someone said his name and she walked out of the room. She couldn't handle it. Sure. And then now we look at her and we sort of like, I mean, I was down in Margate a couple of weeks ago, and we spent like 4 or 5 hours just laughing and joking about him and about how silly he was. And to me, everything that's happened over the past sort of 2.5 years to get me to this point was worth it for that conversation. It was worth it to just see her. Like, he's never coming back. It's sort of, we talk about it being the new normal, right? But just seeing her laughing, and Les laughing, Steve's dad laughing about him, and sort of like talking about silly things that we did, and sort of, and like silly stories and proper silly stories that I'm not going to repeat on here, but just sort of like, but then just laughing, and just all of us in tears of laughter. And I never thought that I'd ever see Lowell laugh again. I never thought I would. And so yeah, so it was a fascinating just experience, and even just the experience of doing it through the process of it. Like, men were coming to me and going, like a bloke called Paul, who was a friend of mine and Steve's when we were younger. He was one of the blokes that did one of the 100 videos, and he sort of yeah, mate, I'll do you one. He's a painter and decorator, sort of top lad, sort of speaks very similar to your lad, yeah. And on the outside, there's nothing there. And then sort of like he's a happy-go-lucky winning the world. And then so he started doing his video diaries, and then in video 3 he broke down in the video and sort of told me through a video that he's in a bad state, and he's not told anyone else. And then tells me that sort of like, even actually on the premiere, told me that this process has saved his life. So when I met his wife hugged me and sort of thanked me and said that we still have this man because of his kids have still got a dad, and his mum still I've still got a husband because of me. And I go, it's not because of me, it's because of this thing that's bigger than me, which is this process of the film. And we're collecting these stories left, right, and centre. So and we're changing lives left, right, and centre. And it's not just and it's just something so simple as I said, it's something so simple in how are you out of 10, or just actually having that conversation or being there, can open those things up. And that's sort of like, that's what I'm finding fascinating and scary at the same time.
What's scary about it?
How simple it is, how raw it is, how that you can actually, just by paying attention and listening, that can be there. And you don't get me wrong, it's a two-way street. Someone needs to be able to trust you enough to tell you how they're feeling, and it's their journey, it's not your journey. You need to sort of like, you're just opening the can. They need to empty the worms out. But just giving, just how we are just on this layer as society. We've just got this whole thing of almost we're waiting to be asked. We're waiting to all it takes is one person to sort of go, "How are you?" Out of 10, and then suddenly these things can explode, and we can open these. We can, like, we're it's like in a micro. It's a microwave meal that hasn't been popped yet, and as soon as you pop it, it's sort of like it's a very different experience. So, I mean, I don't know. That's the scariest thing. The scariest thing is sort of the
actually out there, what's coming up, and that you've created this platform. You're responsible in a certain way to keep it going. During the making of Steve, the documentary, did you ever feel like giving up? Were you ever like, I can't do this, it is too much, or there were too many blocks?
Every day and never. It's sort of, I mean, talking about suicide every day is hard work.
Yes.
It's hard work. And I think that when I started it, I wasn't equipped in the way that I am now. But even, I don't quit. I never give up on anything. So I knew that there was never going to be a realistically way of quitting. But I did think that I did question whether it would work. I did question whether I'm putting everyone else through this.
Yeah. And there's a pressure there.
Yeah.
You've said, trust me, I've got this vision. I want to make this thing that will save one life or more life, something like that. And that's
what I needed to do. I just need to save one life. If I just save one life, I change one person, one man's journey, then I did my job. But I think that the TEDx talk was actually really interesting for me because I had my techniques. I mean, as I say, I'm up to screening like 50 in a couple of weeks, and I had my techniques on how to protect myself for showing the film, and a lot of ways of grounding myself and actually trying to keep myself present. Like, for example, I don't watch the first 20 minutes of the film, and I talk about it beforehand about how to look after yourself, but I'm actually talking about looking after me at the same time. And we have a very good discussion afterwards. You mean the film's a Trojan horse to sort of get men to open up, and but I wasn't prepared properly for the TEDx one. I wasn't prepared, and I was putting up so many blocks in to try and remember, because the whole idea is it's 12 talks to 12 minutes, right? So they are over you. Like my coaches, the TEDx group were amazing. The coaches were amazing. Caroline, my coach, was absolutely amazing.
You've got to memorize it.
Yeah, but you've got to memorize it. And so then suddenly what happens, Steve is a 5-letter word. He's not a person. He's not a person with family and kids and who I grew up with. So what happened was, on hitting these blocks, and and mainly it was like when you're doing a speech, it's bridges. Bridges are the hardest part, because when I'm talking about real things, when I'm talking about real people, that's easy because that's just memory, right? Yeah. But the bridges were the bit that I was blocking with, and then I was suddenly going like, why am I doing this? And then like, am I trying to? And then in my ego, because I've grown up with Ted and I've loved Ted, my ego was like, am I doing this for my ego? Are people thinking that I'm trying to profit off my friend's death? Yeah. So all this stuff started flying around. And so my rehearsal on the Friday was terrible, absolutely terrible, right? To a level that people were going like, is he even going to do this, right? Is it going to be possible? And then that night, I dreamt that Steve was still alive. So I woke up the next morning, and my first thing was like, oh, I've got to ring Caroline because Steve's still alive. And then suddenly I remember going into the bathroom and looking at myself in the mirror, and I believed for a good 20 to 30 seconds that he was still alive. And I walked into the bathroom. Oh, I'm getting a bit teary now just even thinking about it. And I broke down and cried. And I was suddenly, it hit me like someone just punched me in the face. It hit me. And I was like, Christ. And I was sort of like, just like fell onto the floor in my hotel room and was crying. And then tried to sort of, I mean, this is about 6 o'clock in the morning, trying to sort of work out what I'm doing. So I went for a run, broke down and cried in the middle of the street in Tunbridge Wells High Street. Like cleaners people walking past, sort of like going to work, just looking at me, going like, "Are you all right, mate?" Then tried to sort of go down to breakfast and sort of had breakfast with Cheddar, one of the other speakers, and sort of didn't know him well enough to burden him with this thing of I've just dreamt that Steve's still alive, but sort of like try to hide it in this thing. I'm worried about things and stuff like that. So he was fantastic. We had he really helped me sort of, we were both nervous about the thing, but then I've added this other layer, if you like, on top. So I did another rehearsal at 9:30 and cried, basically broke down and cried in the middle of my rehearsal.
Yeah, really?
Yeah. And literally to a point where all the TEDx people were saying to me, you don't need to do this. Do you want to do this? You don't need to do this. We can cancel you. You don't need to do it. We can move things. And it was like, no, I need to do this. I need to do this for Steve's memory. I need to do this for me. So luckily I wasn't up there talking about tractor parts. So you guys gave me a sort of a slightly wider berth. But it was the hardest thing I've ever done.
And what I want to highlight, because people don't know this, but I see it all the time, and I experience it myself because I speak on big stages and tell a bit of my story. And there's always, it seems, this amazing crash or immense emotion or this feeling of vulnerability, failure, like I'm not good enough, who am I, the questions, like all that stuff. It doesn't actually go away. And then, but there's something about the magic of when you do it anyway, that kind of the possibility of pain or the immense adversity that we can face, and then you stood on stage and showed up anyway. And I mean, it was magic. There wasn't a dry eye in the audience, and it's not about the standing ovation, but it's about the impact and the fact that that's going to go on YouTube or wherever and be seen by more men who will be coming to Talk Club and saving lives, right? And so people don't realize that doesn't mean you're on the wrong path. Sometimes we think, oh, fuck, I'm not the person. Who am I? Why am I doing this, right? That it doesn't mean that. It actually means your purpose is so immense that you feel the burden of that. But if you can just hold it, you can just hold pace, and stay there. That's when, do you know what I mean?
No, 100%. I mean, this is the thing. I don't like public speaking. I sort of like. I used to sort of, I mean, I've suffered from many layers of anxiety throughout my career to try and work out how to change presentations to sort of big people. I would change the rules each time to try and sort of get it so that I, because it's not something I naturally am drawn to. I don't know if anyone naturally is, but you sort of go, but I don't get any buzz out of it. I don't enjoy it. I sort of like, it was, and even with this, sort of the reverse of what my wife said to me, you're doing this. And I sort of said, I don't know if I want to do it. She goes, I'm not telling you to do anything, but you're doing this. And then she felt guilty because she sort of like knew how hard it was for me. So she was going like, well, you don't have to do it. And I said, you said I had to do it. And it's like, but it's a real hard thing, because what you do is you have to go. I mean, I have this thing as the juice worth the squeeze. It's sort of like, is all that squeezing worth what comes out on the other end? And it was.
But you don't know until you've done it. That's the hard thing.
but I mean, that's the thing. Quite a lot of what I do is I back myself. I do back myself. I'm very good at backing myself. I'm going like, you will do this, and putting myself into uncomfortable situations where most people like you put yourself above the parapet, someone's going to shoot you up, right?
Yeah.
But the thing is that I believe that if you don't put yourself above the parapet, then no one's going to see this important story or this important thing that needs to be done. And I need to sort of do that for Steve's kids, for my kids, for everyone else's sort of for all those people that haven't got there yet. I think that's why I need to do it.
You do. You've got that purpose is so profound, and it's just keeping you moving forward. Before I ask my final question, where can people find you, find Talk Club? You've mentioned a few things. So the documentary, say that one again.
So you can watch the documentary at stevedocumentary.com.
Okay.
You can join Talk Club at wetalkclub.com.
Yeah.
And you can get me from either of those, or you can grab me. Grab me on Twitter. It's probably the easiest way. So at Ben Akers.
Yeah, perfect. And we'll add all of that into the show notes so that people can follow you, join the club. And just finally, if there is a man watching, a young man within this age range that we're talking about, and he might be feeling sort of like your mate Paul was, that he hasn't said anything, but there is that little struggle, and he doesn't know if it's bad enough or if he should be talking or doing anything, what's your message to that guy?
Join Talk Club. It's very, very simple. Just join Talk Club. Go to wetalkclub.com, join the Facebook group, find the main Facebook group, see how other men are feeling. And it's not even, I don't even want you to sort of like, even if, no, it's not about you being rock bottom, it's about every man joining this, right? So look at it as a gym, right? So this is a free gym membership for your brain. We don't ask you to do anything else. You can come along and see other people working out, if you like. That's the reason why we call it mental fitness, right? So, but then what you do is, if you are feeling sludgy, if something does start going wrong, if you do feel like you need to open up, then this community of Talk Club is here for you. And that's a sort of like, to me, that's a really important thing. Like one of my mates who runs the gym down here, I'm trying to get him to come to a physical Talk Club. He's been an amazing supporter of it. And he helped me set up the one next to his gym in the pub, right? So we believe that all Talk Clubs should be in masculine environments, back to masculinity, where men feel comfortable.
Yeah. And
I said to him, "You're going to come down to Talk Club?" And he's like, "No, mate, you're trying to say I'm mad." And I was like,
yeah.
got ya. And there was a few people around us, and we were all sort of like, and I went to him, "Do people just come to the gym when they're unfit, or do they come to the gym to keep fit?" So the whole idea of Talk Club is about keeping mentally fit.
About maintenance.
And when we had my last, so I went down. I haven't been to Talk Club because I've been touring a bit, so I've been down to my local one for a few weeks. I went down last Wednesday, and what we do is we have a check-in number. So everyone says their check-in numbers, what they normally are. And when we first started it up, everyone was 4s and 5s, and you might leave her a 7 and an 8. Right, I walked in, and of a room of 14 men, right, 12 of them were 8s, and they all went up to 9s, and they all felt this amazing level of, I wouldn't go euphoria, but when you come out of the gym and you feel those endorphins,
endorphin hit, yeah.
They feel they all we all talked about that afterwards. But and then one of them said to me, "The reason why I come here every week is to keep myself mentally fit, to keep on top of things." Because he was part of thanking me for creating this thing, and the other founders that we've got, the 6 founders. But the whole point of it was that when he first walked through that door, he was a 4, and then he moved to a 5, then he moved to a 6, then he moved to a 7, then he moved to an 8, and now he's been at an 8. And that's what's important, is a sort of like, so it's not actually about if you're feeling down, it's about if you're feeling good as well. Like,
love that. Yeah.
Jump on it. Like, you don't, like, you don't, if you can compare it to the physical fitness, when you see someone going for a run, you don't go, oh, they must be unfit, right? You go, oh, good on them. They found some time to go for a run and look after their physical fitness.
Yeah, absolutely.
That's all Talk Club is find some time to look after your mental fitness.
Absolutely. Love that so much. Thank you so much. I agree. It's got to be everyone. Guys, please join Talk Club, follow Ben, find him on Twitter, and get men talking. If you don't join the club, just start talking to your mates or the people around you and get the movement, build some traction, and save another Steve. Thank you so much, Ben, for your time. I really appreciate it.
Thank you so much.